Thank you so much for coming. It's great to see all of you here. There are certainly some new folks to the conversation, so excited to share our story with you today on an innovation district, which is a partnership between George Mason University, Prince William County, City of Manassas, the surrounding businesses, and Northern Virginia Community College. Really exciting next step in building our region. And we also have several of you who have been with us through the journey, and so can't thank you enough for all of the feedback that you have provided to get us to where we are today. And so on behalf of our team and everyone who has contributed, again, really excited to share with you and have Stiletto share the findings from our Innovation District Planning Study, which we now have a final report and will be able to share after this meeting. I want to give a special thank you to Tom Flynn, Patrick Small, Eleanor Wagoner, Jackie Connor, Bob Sweeney, and for your participation on the working group. This team has been meeting on a very regular basis with the Stiletto team. And so with Stiletto, would love to thank Laura, Gina, Jenna, and team for your expertise, for your hard work. And just to let you all know, what you're about to hear today is 722,000 data points that has been leveraged to develop this study. I want to thank Lovey Hamill. She has been pounding the pavement, really reaching out and making sure that folks across our community know about this study and can help contribute to it. And for all of our members of the steering committee who have met on a regular basis to review results and share feedback and guidance for next steps, if you can wave virtually, that would be fantastic as well. Laura, do you want to take it away?
I will take it away. Good morning, everybody. Great to be here with you all and excited for the conversation. I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen. We're going to run you through a presentation. It's going to take us 20-30 minutes to kind of go through what we've put together. We're very happy to entertain any questions as we go through the presentation. We have a couple of questions that we've got to probe some conversation as we wrap that up, and then we'll have some time for additional Q&A. As Amy mentioned, the goal is to get the report out to everybody so you know what we're up to, but this is really the culmination, as Amy said, of a number of months of work with both the working group that we have and our sponsors on this, which is of course George Mason, Prince William County, and the City of Manassas. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If I can't see you and you have any questions, just give a holler as we go through, and again, we'll make sure we also have time at the end of the presentation to talk any further. So, okay, wonderful. So we want to talk first in terms of level setting. The communities of innovation are really economic development drivers, and research and technology parks and innovation districts are really real estate tools. We're going to share with you, of course, a map of where the district is currently located and what we hope to accomplish in the future. But as a starting point, it really is important for us to recognize that development is definitely a part of it. Programming is going to be part of that as well, but they are real estate tools to drive economic development. So innovation districts, and some of you have seen this before, but just as a quick recap, innovation districts always have a master development plan with available land for expansion. There's a partnership with businesses within the district. There's an incubation and/or accelerator center. There's a collaboration agreement with an affiliated university and/or college. And there's a role in promoting technology-led economic development. These are all the things that we see that are taking place. My firm, which I started about 15 years ago, we specialize in innovation districts and ecosystem building. And we've really studied a lot of communities to really understand how to get these off the ground, and excited to share some of those best practices through this exercise. I know Amy's also very involved in this ecosystem across the nation. We've got this innovation ecosystem cascade, and we wanted to share this again for those who are new to the conversation or just even as a refresh. Research and technology parks really began in the 1950s with Stanford University, and a lot of the research and technology parks really emerged in the late 90s and early 2000s throughout the US and really globally. But in the last 10 years, we've seen an evolution of that to evolve to innovation districts. And innovation districts include both the space and placemaking that research and technology parks really started the trend on in having, science and tech companies and space for labs and facilities and amenities, and evolving that to include restaurants and other services and amenities. Housing is part of it, to create micro communities within communities, to really make sure that we're nurturing those up and coming professionals in their where they want to live, work, and play, and creating that ecosystem for companies that are both starting and scaling. The other trends that we're seeing is around innovation corridors. And so innovation corridors are about connecting multiple geographical nodes close to communities. There's tremendous activity that's happening in around Virginia, but also connecting into DC and into Maryland. And so there's lots of organic elements happening today in the community. So it's about building a narrative and connecting the dots between all these exciting initiatives and activities. And then the last piece is around innovation networks. And that's really where we focus on sectors. And many of you will be familiar with the Tech Hubs program federally, in really creating those network nodes throughout the nation focused on certain strategic priorities. And we'll talk a bit about the sectors that we've identified here. And we're hoping to use this as an inspiration, both in terms of where we're at in building this innovation district, but also where you have the potential to go and continue to evolve this idea. We share this to really lay the foundation of, what's the point in all of this? Stiletto make a point. That's kind of what we're trying to do, is to make a point and to really have an impact and focus in on impacts and outcomes and not just activities. And so what we've been trying to look at, and this is a framework that we've built many years ago around, we want to make sure there's priority sectors that are connecting ideas, people, and money, so that we can get researchers and businesses excited about commercialization. We can build that skilled capacity and accelerate business growth and expansion, all to create global competitiveness, make your companies better, faster, so they can hire more smart people, increase their sales, and of course, increase jobs and grow GDP, because these are truly economic development drivers. So the last element I want to highlight, and these all help to inform what we're going to share with you on this particular innovation district, we want to make sure as we're building this out that strategically you've got a mix of services, amenities, facilities, programs, and management to really knit together the strengths that you have in your current facilities and amenities and programs to really catapult that to the next level. And so all of these elements are taken into account as we think about your programming and where we go next in the development and the launch of this innovation district. When we think about what the difference is between a business park and an innovation district, we find this really helps to underscore what we're trying to kind of get at here. And so with a traditional business park that's highlighted in sort of yellow, where we want to go with an innovation district is just augmenting a few things. You've already got manufacturing uses, office uses, and labs, and there are some trails and some intentional development, but we really want to help bring that to the next level to evolve it to an innovation district, which means adding shared facilities in the core of the development, adding networking assets, programming to support companies, and that's companies at all stages, whether it's starting up or scaling up, focus in strategic sectors, making sure there's connections to universities and colleges, and an overarching marketing and promotional campaign that helps you to attract companies and tenants into the community to support broader development. And we want to do this because we want people to stay and play and live and work both in the city of Manassas and Prince William County, so that we can make sure that the folks that are commuting out, maybe they have an opportunity to stay in the community, and that creates a better quality of life for them. It increases potentially your taxation revenues by keeping people closer to home, and just creates a whole new vibrant community. So the goal here is to really harness the region's growing population and some of the core sector strengths that you already have to create lasting economic impact. And we talked about what's the point and focusing in on impact and outcomes. And that's really what we're trying to do. It's not a list of activities that we want to do to say we're doing, 50 things. It's more, what can we do strategically as a community to have a long-lasting economic impact for the institution, for the city, for the county, and really just overall for the residents that live in this great community. We're going to share the vision, mission, and goals of the district, and then we do have a map that we're going to share with you so everyone has kind of an idea of where this location is and what we're hoping to achieve. So the vision is really for the district to be an interconnected hub of discovery, of commerce, and community that's home to world-leading researchers, global companies, and a highly trained, diverse workforce with thriving residents. And so this is truly not just about the tech companies that we hope to attract or the other sectors that are incredibly strong, which we're going to talk about in a minute. It's really about creating that micro community within the community. And the mission is really bringing together those world-class facilities, expertise, and resources that's going to help accelerate impact for the institution, George Mason, for Prince William County, and for the city of Manassas. And so we'll be laser focused on these core elements. The vision and mission was really developed as a result of the different outreach and feedback that we've had through this engagement, which would include, we had a survey from the business community, we've had a number of focus groups, we've had interviews, and then of course our advisory committee and working group. And so it's been through lots of inputs. And as Amy said, there's 700,000 data points that's gone into this exercise, but really the voices that we've heard through the exercise from the participants and the community that's been incredibly engaged, and we're very encouraged by that. Some of the goals that we're hoping to accomplish as we move to goals is about strengthening partnerships between industry academic institutions to really build a strong talent pipeline. If we look at the reasons why companies want to locate in certain areas, it's because they want access to people. And you've got a real burgeoning upcoming talent pipeline that we want to make sure is aligned to those strategic sectors so that we can attract companies to then hire these people in these areas to help them grow their businesses and of course help them to stay and remain in this area. We want to offer education and workforce training programs that meets industry needs. We are looking to create an environment that enables the exchange of ideas between innovation generators in academia, government, industry, and in healthcare, just in terms of all of these core elements. We want to attract young professionals with dynamic spaces, amenities, and exciting job opportunities, establish resources and support to accelerate emerging technology startups, offer program services to help businesses at all stages of growth prosper. And the reason we highlight that is because we really want to see a mix of about 40, 40, 20. So we want 40% of the companies that are less than $1 million in revenue that are in the startup stage. We want about 40% of companies that are between $1 million and $10 million in revenue so that we have those that are scaling. And then about 20% of your core businesses are large multinationals over $20 million in revenue. And this creates a circular economy and a way for startup companies to work with larger companies to have a talent pipeline that's coming up through other businesses. It really does create the magic in helping to create that ecosystem that we're really hoping to nurture. And then lastly, building a community by fostering connection, outreach, and inclusion. So these are our core 7 goals. There's lots of other things involved, but we're trying to stay as focused as we can so that we make sure that we can drive the goal of that impact and the outcomes that we're looking for. So some of you have seen the boundaries. If some of you were participating in our Innovation After Hours, which took place last August, and other conversations that we've had, of course, between then and now. But just as a refresh, what we're looking at in the map here in terms of the location of the district, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so everybody can kind of see. You've got the SciTech campus for George Mason that's located in the heart. You've got the regional airport, which is located kind of in the south end of where we're looking at. We've got various data centers. This is what these icons represent, is the different data centers that are located within the district boundaries. You've also got the Innovation Town Center, which we've heard, is underway, which is very exciting for those developments to occur. And then the purple, we want to highlight here, we've got Future Innovation District subzone, and this is really where that quarry and shopping center is currently located. The historic downtown Manassas, we want to make sure that that's included. There's a really fantastic vibe happening with the city of Manassas and its downtown area. Lots of great restaurants, great retail, very trendy, great for our young professionals. So one of the things that we'll want to focus on, and you'll see this in some of the recommendations, is the transportation and connectivity. We did hear this through the engagement from a number of sources, wanting to make sure with this 1,100-acre site that we can connect people from the north end to the south end and from east to west and everywhere in between. And so that will be something that we'll be considering and looking at in the next steps of making sure that we can create those interconnected sort of nodes within that. And we'll come back to that in the as we get into the Q&A and discussion. If there's anybody that wants to unpack this a little bit further, we're happy to come back to it. But just to give you a bit of a sense of where this is actually situated within the community, it doesn't mean that we won't expand the boundaries in other areas, but we're trying to wrap our heads around what we've got to work with today and how we can lean into both some of those assets and also some of the sector activity that's already taking place, which we think is very exciting.
And so just really quickly to interrupt really quickly, just wanted to make sure that we note that we also have the businesses along Godwin Drive included in this map. So you've got Micron, BAE Systems, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, New Site, et cetera. That's also included in the Innovation District.
Terrific. Thanks, Amy. Okay, so we'll just move on then. So leveraging strength, we pulled a few data points that we wanted to share with you. And again, we've got lots of other information if you're interested in unpacking anything further. We wanted to pull a few things that for us are quite noteworthy. We won't go into the weeds and all this, but I've got 4 or 5 slides that I just want to share with you to really underscore some of the great things that you are building upon and that you have access to in your community. So you've got a nice growing population, a 10% growth is forecasted over the next 5 years in both in the Prince William County area. It's about 6.5% higher than the MSA and at the state level, which is great. People are moving to the city of Manassas and in Prince William County. In 2021, for example, we had almost 4,000 people move to the city of Manassas. About 31,000 people moved to Prince William County, and they're moving from areas in Maryland, North Carolina, California, and Florida. So you're attracting people to your area because of your quality of life, which is great. You've got an educated community with about 1/3 of the residents that have a bachelor's degree or higher, and you've got about 44% of residents in the county that have the 3rd highest attainment percentage in the state, which is great because you've got high education attainment in the state. And this is outpacing the percentage at the state level at 41%, which is really exciting. You've got a few other education highlights. You've got about 4,000 students just at the SciTech campus alone, which we think is great. The edge of the SciTech campus does offer experiential learning opportunities. You're going to see some of that repeat in some of the programming that we've identified for the district to continue on that in terms of building that opportunity out for experiential learning. There is a skill demand in Prince William County in the professional, scientific, and technical service areas. And this would include things like computer science, cybersecurity, project management, information systems, and systems engineering. So this is all really exciting, particularly to support the sectors that we are looking at and identifying. Some research highlight that new beautiful facility, 132,000 square feet, that is an interdisciplinary facility for life sciences and engineering. From George Mason, you've got 9 research centers and institutes. I won't list them all, but you've got some in a variety of areas in the key sectors that we hope to build capacity on. And the campus does include things like the Biomedical Research Lab, one of a dozen federally funded biocontainment labs in the US, which is very exciting and quite unique. We want to highlight as well. A few workforce highlights. You've got about 27,000 jobs in the city of Manassas with an expected growth of about 7% over the next 5 years. And that is a higher rate than that in both the MSA and at the state level. Your healthcare is projected to be one of the largest growing workforce industries in the county with about a 17% increase over the next 5 years that's forecasted. And it looks like that's about the 3rd largest industry growth in the Washington, Arlington, Alexandria MSA, as well as the 5th largest industry growth within the state of Virginia. A couple other highlights, and then we'll move on to the sectors. Some industry highlights, which is around significant growth in the biological product manufacturing, some satellite telecommunications growth. Your GRP in the city of Manassas increased by 51% between 2019 and 2023, which is very exciting. You've got a GRP growth in Prince William County as well that increased by close to 30% in the last 5 years. Or 4 years, because that goes to 2023. And then your construction has a location quotient double the national average, which is very exciting. It means things are happening, things are moving, you're building things out at a time when that growth has slowed in some areas. And so that's also very exciting and appealing to other companies that may be interested in this area. So I know I've gone through that quickly. If there's any questions on that, we're happy to come back to it, and you'll have an opportunity to look at that a little bit further. But some exciting stuff there that you should be very enthusiastic about, that are helping to demonstrate that you're outpacing other areas. I'm going to move into the sector identification. There's 4 sectors as we studied all of the different data points. And when we're looking at identifying cluster development and sector growth, we're looking at things like your education programming, your research capacity, your industry, which is your workforce and your business counts. And we're also looking at your community ecosystem in terms of things like accelerators, things like support that's available to help these companies thrive. And these are the 4 sectors that we've landed on. So we've got life sciences, biotechnology, and forensics. We've got aerospace and defense. We've got cybersecurity and data infrastructure and semiconductors and electronics. We believe that there's capacity in the community in those areas to support growth in these areas. And again, very happy to have any conversation. Some of these will make a lot of sense to folks. We want to identify these areas because we do believe that you can kind of stand out among your peer, both counties and states across the nation, to attract companies in these areas as a result of all the strengths that you have to build upon. And again, happy to come back to that in the Q&A portion. We do want to highlight this as well. So if we look at those 4 sectors from the previous slide, there's other elements that are what we call technology focused areas and foundational sciences that also support each of those 4 areas. So we don't want to have 20 sectors to focus in on because you want to be as focused as you can be. But this is just to underscore the fact that your technology focused areas like advanced manufacturing, ICT, AI, analytic instruments, and supply chain and logistics, you've got some competencies in these areas. They may not be the primary areas, but they're more horizontal components that are supporting and are needed to build capacity in the 4 priority sectors that we've identified. There's also foundational sciences like computer and information sciences, biology, health sciences, engineering, and mathematics and statistics that are also some really interesting things happening at the institution level that you can lean into to support focus in these areas. And again, happy to answer any questions on all of that. We want to talk a little bit just in terms as we think about, what's in it for me, because everybody wants to make sure that they're going to get something out of all of this. We've identified some core buckets and benefits to the main benefactors of this initiative. So we've got higher education, and we say higher education because we know George Mason is our sponsoring institution, but we've also got some other great institutions and colleges in the region that will hopefully become part of the culmination of the launch of this program. We've got Prince William County, we've got the City of Manassas, and of course industry. And we know there's already been incredible support from industry in a couple of industry roundtables that we've held, in outreach that the team is doing now to help support the launch and the implementation that will come next. And so, there's lots in it for everyone as we look at this, whether it's perception and profile, economic expanding impact, increasing industry-sponsored research and profiling, student experience, commercialization for the institution. There's lots of great stuff. If you're looking at the government level with the county and with the city, we want to make sure we get that economic return and the economic development, that workforce development, so that we can grow in strategic areas and have focused development. And we also want to make sure that we lean into the local components and supporting sort of that the local businesses that exist and helping them to thrive as a result of having an increase in people working in this area. That's going to have a local impact as well in supporting those businesses. And then, of course, for industry, they've shared with us that they want to have access to the right skills and a workforce that's able to support their growth plans. And so we really do believe that that's an incredible benefit to industry and what we're hearing from them as well in terms of helping to support their growth with R&D, with talent development, and really upping the brand identity in the county and at the state level where those businesses are choosing to locate. And we've already kind of gone into all of that. So we want to get into recommendations because we certainly want to make sure we leave some time for questions that you might have in terms of thinking through next steps. And if time permits, we do have a little bit of a quickie Mentimeter survey that we'd like to get to, but we'll pause on that once we have an opportunity to hear from you as well. So we've identified basically 3 pillars. These pillars is what the focus will be in the implementation stage to help us really mobilize this. So we want to focus and it lines up with the themes that we heard through the community engagement, hearing from companies and from businesses and individuals like yourselves on what's needed and what's missing to make sure that we can have this as an environment that's going to thrive and be sustained over time. So pillar one is marketing and branding. And as the name implies, it's really about making sure we've got a unique brand, that we're consistent in our communication and messaging across the county, the city, the institution, and with all of you as stakeholders in the community. So marketing and branding is a component. Industry support and collaboration. We want to make sure that this creates really a connected ecosystem with businesses, the talent, which is the workforce, and then the community, and bringing all those pieces together. And then workforce programming, making sure we've got intentional and tailored workforce programming that's going to strengthen the talent pipeline, supporting company growth and priority sector advancement. And so these are the three areas. The various elements, we do have a number of different specific initiatives under each of these, and we won't go into the weeds on all of this for today. We want to just at least let you know what we're thinking about and where things will be going. So as you think about how you may want to get involved in this initiative as we move forward to the launch and implementation, there may be some elements within here that resonate with you, and there will be opportunities to participate in how that comes to life as we move with the implementation, to make sure that this is a co-created innovation district programming that really does respond to where you're at and what you want to see in the community. And so with each of these elements and pillars of what's been identified, marketing, things like branding, social media, making sure you've got materials, you've got some success stories, maybe there's tours and events. The industry support and collaboration, we're hoping to have sort of a database for intellectual property and research to make it easier for businesses to understand what's there so that they can strengthen their business and accelerate their growth. Looking at things like programming to support innovation and commercialization, and having access to capital and funds, leveraging those core research facilities that are currently in the community. For your workforce programming, like I mentioned, it's about that specialized technical skill building, experiential learning, possibly having a job repository, networking opportunities, making sure that we've got opportunities for expansion and mentorship and experiential learning, which is taking place today, but we'd like to amp that up a bit because that's the feedback we've heard. So we'll come back to this potentially in a little bit of a survey with you of things that you might like to see from a priority perspective, once we have the opportunity to hear from you on any questions that you might have. A couple of last things that we want to talk about before we open up the floor. In terms of mobilizing the district, there's kind of two things that we want to think about. And when we're building innovation districts and communities of innovation, there's really 6 elements that you need to have to make sure that your district can be sustained successfully over time. And those elements are, you want to have multi-level government support, you want to have a champion, you want to have a market demand that is clearly defined, and that's done with strategic sector focus and making sure you've got a strong value proposition, which is where all the programming comes in. And then, of course, your dedication to supporting company growth. And that comes with having the right governance structure and a financial model that will help you to sustain it. And so everything we've talked to up until this point underscores the first 5, which is your government support, your champion, we've been working on that, your sector focus, which we've talked about, your value prop, which is really about the programming. And the last 2 pieces is really around your governance and your financial model. So there's a few recommendations that you'll see in the report around governance, and that's about making sure that you've got the appropriate structure to help support the core sponsors of this initiative and the community at large. And that's about adopting a 501c3 governance structure so that the district is a separate entity to be able to accelerate and maximize its impact, to deliver and build programs as needed, to respond nimbly to industry needs, and to make sure that you can kind of pull the pieces together at the speed of business. We know that that's really important. About 65% of parks and districts throughout the nation have a separate entity, a 501c3, to be able to achieve just that. You want to formalize the collaboration between the city, the institution of George Mason, Northern Virginia Community College, and Prince William County, with support from industry to ensure that we can sustain the priorities and the operations as a collective. and then a full governance model and template with a memorandum of understanding and other elements. I know this is a little bit granular for the conversation, but it's just to underscore that that's kind of what will happen next, is to really make this official, pull the pieces together with the core partners, and then figure out how everyone can plug and play from there. So that's on the governance side, to make sure we've got the right structure. When we think about a financial model, just so everyone can wrap their heads around it, we are working on a Go Virginia implementation grant to launch the district. Go Virginia did support the planning work that we've been doing that's helped to enable the community to bring us on board, and focus in on a few events and different things that we've been working on over the last 6 to 8 months. The next step is to really mobilize the district over the next couple of years. And so there is a grant in the works. The goal is to identify about $1.5 to $2 million. That's kind of what you need on an annual basis as you get things going. There is a match that we're looking for of $750 to $1 million, and conversations are already occurring with a number of folks in the community. We're actually receiving some really positive feedback, and a big thanks to those that have already put their hand up, and to the team that's actually working on that. I know Jackie and Lovey are on the call and have been instrumental in that, in helping to get that going. But ultimately, we're trying to cover off some of those marketing and branding, some of your program development pieces that we've highlighted, making sure that you can develop a sustainable model, which I'll pull up next before we talk about next steps, and then your governance structure and an overall program development. So we want to make sure that you've got all of these pieces covered over the next couple of years to really get this going, get the programming launched, and be off on the right foot as you formalize the longer term pieces. So if you haven't heard from us yet, you might in the near future. And thank you in advance for taking the time to meet with folks from the team to have that conversation. We're really excited about it, and we think there's something really extraordinary here, and we're excited to continue the conversation with you. When we think about long term, I'll just highlight this real quick. When you're looking at innovation districts and communities of innovation, there's a number of core funding sources beyond government funding, because we don't want to be beholden to government infinitely. We want to make sure that this can be a sustainable, model to be able to run itself and run the programming over time. And so generally speaking, you can get leasing revenues from buildings, you can get land rent participation fees. Sometimes there's business improvement levies, there's trust funds, corporate sponsors, sponsored revenues, programming and service delivery revenues, upskilling and block training, which is usually in partnership with higher education, events, and then public-private university partnerships as well. We've highlighted here the top three are not really applicable because you don't own the land. The land is owned by a number of different developers. You don't own the buildings, so you can't charge for the buildings and the infrastructure. So what we'll be focusing on in the next phase is really trying to see where you can actually tap into that longer term funding with a number of these other funding sources to be able to line that up. So if you can get your seed funding going with the support of the match that we'll get from industry, with the funding that we're hoping to get from the state, and then over the next couple of years, we'll flush these elements out and try and tee all those pieces up for that longer term sustainable revenue, so that you're at fully sustainable by about year 5 is the goal, and then operating on your own. And so that's what we wanted to cover on the financial piece. Before we move into the discussion, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about next steps, and then we're going to get into any questions that you might have. So just quickly, where we're at today, we're finalizing the report. We're working on that Go Virginia implementation grant, which will go in March. We're working on securing our match. And again, thank you to the team and to those who've already had conversations. We're having the roundtable today. We've got a few things coming up, and actually this is going to be taking place in February. There's a lunch and learn coming up March 6th. We hope that you'll participate in that. We're very excited. It is in person, and more details to follow if you haven't seen that yet. We have a great speaker lined up from the Bush Institute, who's going to share some really great information and just sort of support all the things that we've been looking at from a different perspective. There's a board workshop with the supervisors. We've been engaging the board of supervisors, and I know there's 1 or 2 on the call today. Thank you so much for your continued support and participation. We will be working with them, and then we'll be submitting the Go Virginia grant and application again in March, with the goal of launching things come June. I'm going to stop the screen share at this time and just open things up. I'm conscious of the time, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity for some Q&A. We have a little bit of a Mentimeter. If we have time, we'll get to it, but certainly happy to open things up for anyone that has any questions at this point. I know Tom Gordy has his hand up. Supervisor Gordy, go ahead.
Good morning, Laura. Thank you for this presentation, and thank you for everyone who's been involved in this process. Very excited to see the pace at which this is moving, and just looking forward to seeing this come to fruition. You know, as we look at this from a geographic standpoint and the expansion into different areas of the county outside of what is the current Innovation Park, we're going to be looking at, we need to be starting to look at the zoning and the underlying ordinances that we can implement to sort of make this, I guess, for lack of a better term, shovel ready in some of these areas. So have you, as part of your plan, have you, in your experience, what have you seen, and how, in terms of how localities can implement these zoning districts to help expedite the implementation of the district?
Well, you know, every community is different on that. And some communities, are you thinking like in terms of a business improvement area sort of thing, like establishing that as a zone?
Correct.
Yeah, we'd love to see something like that, to be honest, because if you do have there's a number of benefits that can come from that. One is if there is a defined area, it sort of protects that area to be focused in on the areas of growth that you've identified, and really stay true to that mission, with covenants around that, right? In terms of many parks and districts don't necessarily have a business improvement area zone, but they do have tenant criteria to be able to guide what goes in, so that there's a tie back to the institution. There's a focus on R&D. It's in one of the priority sectors. They're doing experiential learning or helping to support workforce development. And so you can you could even start anytime, because the zoning stuff sometimes takes a little time, but you could even start anytime with identifying certain criteria of what you'd like to see within that area, and having the buy-in from the landlords and business owners from a high level in terms of sticking to that, while you work through the details of something more formalized, like an innovation zone or business improvement area designation, to leave that open to be able to identify other, you know, funding streams, as we highlighted in the financial slide, over time that could be generated. Is that what you're thinking?
Absolutely. I mean, so we're expanding to areas that, you know, right now, if you look outside the Innovation Park, we have areas around the Manassas Airport that are A1 right now. They're basically turf farms. So as we think about aerospace engineering and tying those activities in that area to something that coexists with the airport, you know, just kind of looking at these district types of zonings that are a little different than what we currently have on the books, but really geared towards and within our district. I mean, we're having a little challenge between you know, heavy industrial and light industrial, with certain limitations on what can be done in light industrial, which puts us creates a lot of our small businesses, our startups, are having to go into M1 zoning, which now they're competing with data centers, which is very expensive. So looking at how do we create a zoning that meets these diverse business types, and especially when you start looking at manufacturing, but protecting that land so that it is allowing us to have the diversity within our economy beyond a single industry. So just looking at it from a broad, you know, having a broad zoning that, but at the same time, it ensures that we're actually accomplishing what the Innovation District is set to accomplish.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And data centers are great. We know that there's lots of capacity and some activities on that with some of the data centers located within the district today. You do have limited land left in terms of what could be developed. So it would probably be really great from a strategic perspective if we're trying to drive that outcome to focus in on the remaining lands that are available in those strategic targeted sectors. One of the things that we found that is helpful is having sort of a scorecard on your criteria of what goes in, and then a minimum score to make sure that you're meeting the criteria, so that it becomes not black and white, but provides some parameters, but also some flexibility in terms of managing that over time. And we can maybe chat about that offline as well, Supervisor, just to kind of see where that could go next, because it is, it's a big thing to chew on. To try and figure that out. And I know, Tom, you put your hand up. Did you want to comment on that in response to that? And I know we've also got a couple other folks with their hands up as well. But Tom, I'm assuming you wanted to respond to that.
Yes, just real quickly, Supervisor Gordy, Tom Flynn, and that's the issue you brought up is something that I think is one of the reasons that we want to get this to the Board of County Supervisors in some type of workshop session, so you can actually have that discussion as how does this relate to zoning decisions, and give us some direction on that.
Thank you, Tom. That's great. I appreciate that. Thank you so much again, Supervisor Gordy, for the question. And Supervisor Washington, I think that you also have your hand up.
Not a supervisor, but I'm Tanya Washington, Planning Director for Prince William County. So very nice to meet a number of you. Actually, Supervisor Gordy brought up one of the things that I was going to bring up, which is, looking strategically at future land use and how we can prepare, sites that haven't been developed, or maybe opportunities for redevelopment, but it's probably more new development to support the Innovation District. Took note of a number of things that were raised. That was what I had in my mind as well, doing some strategic proactive rezoning. Part of what you're talking about with a business improvement zone is essentially an overlay district. There is actually an existing overlay district over part of this area. It's called the TIOD, which is already on our list to take a look at and to potentially make modifications, or maybe even to change it or even eliminate it. So we do have a number of different options that we can look at. The other thing I also just wanted to mention, mainly for informational purposes, the part of this area is already an existing regional activity center. That was identified by our county and the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. So that's one sort of designation. It's really more of a transportation and land use planning designation, but just wanted to note that it's already identified. I think in looking at that map, it's not the entire boundary for the proposed district, but it's a lot of it. The other thing else, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's good to keep in mind as we think about opportunities for expanding those boundaries, to make sure that it's aligned with what you're referencing, right? So that's great. Thank you for flagging that. Yep.
Right. And then the other thing I wanted to note was because part of the proposed boundaries include the area that's closer to Sudley Road. And we are, through a directive from Supervisor Gordy, we also have in our queue to do a future small area plan, a Sudley Road corridor plan. So that's, a little further away, but, given that you're looking at some adjacencies with part of the Sudley Road corridor, that would be part of the Innovation District. That's just something else to keep in mind. And also, frankly, will be helpful when we do get to that corridor plan to think about the connections between that corridor, and this district.
Yeah, love it. That's great. Thank you. All great points, and certainly things to keep in mind as we go to the next step. So thank you. And that's wonderful. Thank you for the question. I appreciate that. Truett, you have your hand up. Thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I was looking at and it went through kind of quickly, but the revenue, the concept of taxing, property owners. I just wanted to ensure that this was envisioned as being more of one of the commercial components, as opposed to the only residential component that's within the Innovation District. Meaning that we're getting ready to open for sales, and I don't want to have a weird situation where somebody wants to effectively tax our homeowners in the future, that would be problematic.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the question, Truett. And we highlight that as an option in terms of something that could be considered, but of course it's very complicated, right? Because you'd run into situations where if you've got new developments, you'd need to grandfather different components. So that in itself is a whole conversation around what's feasible, what would be realistic. In other areas, often what they will do is put a levy on by acre, and it's generally a nominal amount. You've got 1,100 acres, right? And so there's quite a bit of land that's in there, and what that model would look like is yet to be determined. But certainly conversations with folks like yourselves with development that are occurring in there in terms of what's realistic, what's doable, how will that work? There's probably going to be a number of ways to slice that out. And that might end up not really being feasible because maybe that becomes too challenging for the landowner. So it needs to be something that's done in a way that will not make it prohibitive for any development that you do have, and understanding that. But in terms of housing, it's not usually by the housing unit, it's usually by acre or total square footage of development is normally how something like that is structured, and generally a sliding scale over time to allow for any change that would be made to be done in a way that allows the landlords and the landowners to be able to adjust accordingly, if applicable. And that's to say, if it ends up being something to be done, it's more just, here's some ideas. If this is something that's feasible, great. And if it's not, there may be some other ways to be able to generate that long-term sustainable income that will be looked at in the next phase, just to see what makes sense and what's actually doable.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for the question. Appreciate that. Amy, did you want to chime in?
Yes, sorry. I see we have a question in the chat here by Joe Stansby, and his question is, to make this district truly a place so that people want to live and work, transit has to be part of the equation. How do we envision OmniRide working to help facilitate development over the coming years? Joe, you are not alone in this comment, and we have heard this from many of the folks that we have talked to throughout this process. And so I do see that Bob Schneider is on the call today. And we've been having conversations with him and sharing the importance of that, and just wanted to see if he would like to speak up and share some of his thoughts around that question.
Sure. Much like everyone else, funding is always the issue, and we are a publicly funded entity, and where the dollars flow, we go. It's what it boils down to. And so one of the key things that I remember, I think it was 2019, I stood at George Mason University at a transportation forum tied to the future of the Innovation District. And they were talking about these very things, teeing up these conversations. And I said, transit has to be one of the key ingredients, not smeared on at the end. We have to be baked into the cake. And that is one of the key things to consider. What we have been doing is slowly migrating our services and rearranging our services westward through routes and services, migrating to microtransit, increasing frequency. And now we are positioned where, if the funding is available, some of our next services will connect downtown to the George Mason campus. When I say downtown Manassas, we are looking very closely at that connectivity between Manassas to Micron, to George Mason, to our university lot, because we just started commuter routes from Warrenton and Front Royal that connected at the university lot. So we now have routes that bring passengers in from Front Royal and Warrenton, and we know there's faculty and staff that live in those areas. So now you're not just talking about, we tend to think from a student life perspective, but now you're actually talking about it from bringing in workforce development, engineering, support staff. You've now got different avenues to look at it, where we now can bring commuters into Prince William to access a transportation network to then get them to the Innovation District. That's what we're looking at in the next couple of years. It always comes down to funding. One thing that is very, very unique about, talked about taxation and revenue streams. Prince William County is the only major provider of transit service in the Commonwealth that does not have a property tax for its residents for transportation. Almost 100% of all funding for transit in Prince William County comes from one of two sources: the motor fuels tax, or either the state or federal government. We collect a lot of money from the federal government through fares and grants, and the state for the commuter services. We don't actually have any dedicated funding streams, and there isn't a set aside for example, business tax. So it's like, hey, wouldn't we love to add more services for hospitals or universities or workforce development? There's no dedicated business tax. There's no dedicated property tax. There's no component of that. That just goes to the general fund. And historically, the county has not dedicated funds from the general fund. We've used the motor fuels tax as well as those outside resources. So Prince William County's been very, very innovative for that. That's one of those things that they deserve tremendous credit for. But now when we're looking at things like putting together the innovation district, it's going to require some innovative thinking about how we leverage financing in some different ways.
Thank you, Bob, both Bobs. Thank you for the question and thank you for the comments. I know there's also a comment in the chat just in terms of the slides. I think, Amy, we are planning on sending out the report. Were you thinking the slides are going out as well? I think that should be okay.
Yeah, the slides are helpful for folks to be able to socialize what we're talking about. That's great. But we'll also be sending the full report so you have all the information at your fingertips.
There's another question in the chat from Tanya. Again, had a question about the proposed district governance. Would that intersect or interact with the Innovation Park Governance existing board? Yet to be determined. That's part of what we need to look at in the next steps in terms of the organizations that are wrapped around supporting these types of developments. I would imagine that there will be some sort of continuity to make sure that there's not duplication, but that everything is sort of knitted together nicely. And so the folks that are participating on that current existing governance board, perhaps that can be a launch pad for who might be identified as participants in the broader innovation district. But again, that will come in the next steps.
Yeah, if I
go
could
ahead.
just add really briefly, just as you think through that, Innovation Park also has an Innovation Architectural Review Board as well that has a specific charge to review development plans, certainly architectural and other related development plans for development in that area. So that's just it isn't just their overarching board, but there's this other entity as well. That's part of the review process for development in that area. So just want to make sure, yeah, you take that into consideration. There's a whole other, set of mechanisms I'm sure Tom has probably shared with you all, but just something else to kind of sort through.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you for that, and certainly noted, and will be part of the next piece. I see Dave McGettigan has posted a link here for a feasibility study that was done on a shuttle. Thank you for sharing that. We'll be sure to take a look at that as well. And again, the transportation is definitely something that came up in a lot of the conversations with the survey, with the interviews, with the focus groups, and making sure we can figure out that connectivity. 1,100 acres is a lot of land to get from, again, south, the north end to the south end, and east to west, and everywhere in between. And so that's certainly something that we'll be taking a closer look at as we move to the next stages. Any other questions that anybody has? I'm conscious of the time. I know we have just a few minutes left, and certainly want to make sure if there's any other questions that anyone has, that now's a really great time to do that. This meeting, as Amy mentioned at the beginning, is being recorded and will be available for anyone who is interested. We will get the slides out and you will see the report fairly soon in terms of all of the components that have taken place so far. And then we do certainly look forward to your continued participation, because this is just the beginning of where we'll need you. I know Jackie is on the call and Lovey, and if you haven't heard from them, you may be hearing from them, and we hope that you'll take the time to meet with them to learn a bit more about how you can become engaged at this ground level and really support the community in getting this off the ground. Before, if there's anybody else, please again continue to feel free to put in the chat. I do want to provide an opportunity again for Amy and Tom, if there's anything further that either of you want to share before we wrap things up for this discussion today. Amy, first, over to you. Anything on your side?
Well, I did see that Christina Nguyen is on, and just want to make sure if she had any comments that she would like to make.
Sure.
Well, thank
Christina.
you, Amy, for putting me on the spot.
You love it.
No, I apologize that I was late to the meeting, but sounds like it was a fantastic discussion with a lot of good questions, and really appreciate Amy and Laura and Tom. And I think, I love the interest and there's, the devil's always in the details and we've got to figure all that out. But it just, as long as we can continue to move this forward, I think it's just going to be better for George Mason, Prince William County, and the city of Manassas, and really all our businesses and residents. So really excited and very thankful for the work that everybody's been putting in so far. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Appreciate that. Okay, so with that, folks, I think we're going to wrap things up. We appreciate your time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us offline. We're very happy to address anything that may come in through email.